You've just bought your dream retirement cabin by the lake. You're standing on your own front porch, deed in hand, when two men in official-looking uniforms march up your driveway and tell you you're under arrest for trespassing on your own property. That's exactly what happened to me. And what started as harassment from a power-hungry homeowners association turned into something much darker. But they picked the wrong person to mess with. This is the story of how I fought back and exposed a criminal conspiracy that had been terrorizing our lake community for years. If you've ever dealt with an out-of-control HOA, you're going to want to hear this. You know that feeling when you finally find something you've been searching for your whole life? That's exactly how I felt when I saw that old cabin at the county auction. It wasn't much to look at. The deck was rotting. The roof sagged like an old man's back, and the windows were so cloudy you could barely see through them. But sitting there on the edge of Crystal Lake, surrounded by towering pine trees, it had something most places don't: soul. My wife Sarah and I had been talking about finding a place to retire for years, somewhere peaceful. Somewhere we could watch our grandkids learn to fish and roast marshmallows around a campfire. This cabin wasn't perfect, but it had potential. The auction was straightforward. The previous owner had passed away with no family to claim it. The county just wanted it off their books. When the auctioneer's gavel came down, I was the proud owner of 1.2 acres of lakefront property and a cabin that had been in private hands since 1962, long before any of these modern developments existed. I remember driving out there that first weekend with Sarah. That gravel road wound through the trees, and when the lake came into view, she gasped, "Oh, honey." "It's beautiful," she said, squeezing my arm. "I can already picture Christmas mornings here with the kids." I felt this surge of pride, like I'd finally done something right. "We're going to fix her up," I told Sarah. "New deck, fresh paint, maybe expand the kitchen. This place is going to be perfect." That first week, I threw myself into planning. I measured rooms, sketched layouts, made lists of materials. I was like a kid with a new toy. The cabin needed work, sure, but I had time, I had tools, I had a vision. Then she showed up. I was replacing some loose boards on the front steps when I heard footsteps on the gravel. A woman was marching up my driveway like she owned the place. Mid-50s, perfectly styled blonde hair, carrying a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Excuse me," she called out, not bothering with pleasantries. "I'm Margaret Whitman, president of the Lakeview Homeowners Association. We need to talk." I straightened up, wiping sawdust off my hands. "Good morning. I'm Tom. Just bought this place at auction. Planning to fix it up?" Her smile was thin and cold. "Yes. Well, that's what we need to discuss. This property falls under HOA jurisdiction. There are rules here. Architectural guidelines, maintenance standards, lake usage fees. You can't just do whatever you want." I felt my stomach tighten. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this cabin predates your HOA by decades. I have the deed right here showing continuous private ownership since 1962. I reached for my folder, but she barely glanced at the documents. "That may be what you think," she said dismissively. "But we've been managing this entire lakefront area for 15 years. Everyone follows the rules here. It's just easier that way." The way she said easier made my skin crawl. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a threat. "I appreciate you stopping by," I said carefully. "But I believe you're mistaken about your authority over this property." Her expression hardened. "Mr. ... double quotes." She paused, realizing she didn't know my last name. "Johnson," I said. "Mr. Johnson. You'll find that cooperation with the HOA makes life much more pleasant around here. Those who choose to be ... difficult often find themselves quite uncomfortable." After she left, I sat on my half-finished steps, feeling like someone had just walked over my grave. Sarah found me there an hour later, staring at the lake. "How'd it go today?" she asked. I told her about Margaret's visit. Sarah's face darkened. "She threatened you? On your own property?" "Not directly," I said. But the message was pretty clear. Sarah sat down beside me. "Tom, we have the deed. We have the legal documents. Don't let some power-hungry busybody ruin this for us. I squeezed her hand. You're right. I'm probably just overthinking it, but deep down, I had this sick feeling that our dream was about to become a nightmare. 2 days later, I got my first taste of what Margaret meant by uncomfortable. I woke up that Tuesday morning, excited to work on the cabin. I'd ordered new decking materials, and they were being delivered that afternoon. I grabbed my coffee and stepped outside to check on the second progress from the day before. That's when I saw at my front gate a simple metal farm gate that had been there for decades, was wrapped tight with a thick chain and secured with a heavy padlock. A laminated sign hung from it. Property closed by order of Lakeview HOA. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I stood there for a moment, coffee cup halfway to my lips, just staring. Someone had come onto my property in the middle of the night and chained my gate shut. The audacity of it took my breath away. I was angry, sure, but I was also scared. These people were escalating things fast, and I didn't know how far they were willing to go. I grabbed my bolt cutters from the truck and snapped that chain like it was made of paper. The satisfying crack echoed across the lake. I threw the pieces in my trash can and got back to work, but my hands were shaking. That evening, my neighbor Bill came walking by with his old retriever, Max. Bill was in his 70s, a retired electrician who'd lived on the lake for 20 years. Evening. Tom, he said quietly, glancing around nervously. Heard you had some trouble? Word travels fast around here, I said. Bill stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen, son, that hoe, they're not what they seem. They've run off half a dozen property owners over the years. Good people who just wanted to enjoy their cabins? What do you mean, run off? Harassment, threats, legal games they can't afford to fight. One couple, the Hendersons. They just abandoned their place after men in uniforms showed up, claiming they were violating county ordinances. County never sent anyone, but by the time they figured that out, the stress had broken them. My blood ran cold. Men in uniforms? That's their favorite trick, Bill whispered. They get these guys to dress up like cops or county officials, scare people into thinking they're in legal trouble. Most folks are too intimidated to check if it's legitimate. He looked around again, then patted Max's head. Just be careful, Tom, and if anything happens, document everything. Take pictures. Record conversations. These people are bullies, but bullies don't like bright lights. After Bill left, I sat on my porch feeling sick to my stomach. What had we gotten ourselves into? 3 days of peaceful work gave me hope that maybe they'd gotten the message. I replaced most of the deck boards, fixed a leak in the roof, and even started painting the shutters. Sarah came out that weekend and was thrilled with the progress. It's starting to look like home, she said, hugging my arm, but that calm didn't last. The following Monday, I was inside stripping old wallpaper when I heard vehicles in the driveway, plural. I looked out the window and felt my heart drop into my stomach. 2 black SUVs with tinted windows. Official-looking magnetic decals on the doors reading, County Sheriff's Department. My mouth went dry. 2 men got out of the first vehicle. They wore dark navy shirts with patches on the shoulders and shiny badges clipped to their belts. Everything looked official, but something felt wrong. I stepped onto the porch, and immediately one of them started shouting, "Sir, step down from the porch with your hands visible. You're trespassing on HOA property." My legs felt like rubber. I'm sorry, what? You're under arrest for trespassing in violation of community ordinances. Come down here now. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Arrest? On my own property? Officers, there's been a mistake, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I own this property. I have the deed inside. Let me show you, sir. Do not reach for anything. The taller one barked. Keep your hands where we can see them. That's when my brain kicked in. I looked closer at their uniforms. The badges looked wrong to shiny, like costume jewelry. The patches had the wrong county name. And the shorter guy was wearing sneakers with his uniform pants. Bill's warning echoed in my head. They get these guys to dress up like cops. My fear transformed into white-hot anger. If you're real deputies, I said firmly, Give me your badge numbers. Right now, in the name of your commanding officer. They exchanged a look. The taller one's confidence wavered for just a second. We don't have to explain ourselves to you, he snapped. Now come down here, or we'll come up there. That's when I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 on speaker, holding it high so they could see exactly what I was doing. 911. What's your emergency? This is Tom Johnson at 1247 Lakeview Road. I have 2 men on my property impersonating law enforcement officers and threatening to arrest me. Please send real deputies immediately. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Both fake cops went pale. They stumbled backward toward their vehicles like vampires fleeing sunlight. This isn't over. One of them shouted, pointing at me. You can't fight the whole community. They ripped the magnetic decals off their doors and tore out of my driveway, gravel spraying everywhere. I stood on my porch, phone still in hand, shaking with adrenaline and rage. The 911 dispatcher's calm voice brought me back to reality. Sir, are you safe? Units are on the way. When the real deputies arrived 15 minutes later, they confirmed what I already knew. No one from the sheriff's department had been sent to my property. What I'd experienced was a serious crime. Impersonating a law enforcement officer is a felony, Deputy Martinez explained as he took my statement. These people crossed a major line today. It was the HOA, I said. It has to be. Who else would go this far? He nodded grimly. We've had complaints about this HOA before, but nothing we could prove. With your testimony and the photos you took, we might finally have something to work with. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me jump. But beneath the fear, something else was growing. Determination. They'd tried to terrify me into abandoning my dream. Instead, they'd awakened something fierce in me. Nobody was going to steal my cabin. Nobody. The next morning, I called Deputy Martinez. I want to help you catch these people, I told him. Whatever it takes. There was a pause. Mr. Johnson, I admire your courage, but these folks are dangerous. They've escalated to felony crimes, which is exactly why they need to be stopped, I said. How many other families have they terrorized? How many people have lost their homes because they were too scared to fight back? He sighed. You're right. And honestly, you might be our best shot at building a case. If you're willing, we can set up surveillance around your property. Next time they try something, we'll be ready. That afternoon, I installed security cameras around the cabin, hidden ones with motion alerts that sent notifications straight to my phone. I also called my son David and explained the situation. Dad, this is insane, he said. You should just sell the place and find somewhere else. No, I said firmly. That's exactly what they want. If I run, they win, and they'll do this to the next person. Sometimes you have to take a stand. Sarah wasn't thrilled about me potentially putting myself in danger. But she understood. Just promise me you won't try to be a hero, she said. Let the police handle it. Over the next few days, neighbors started approaching me. Word had spread about the fake arrest attempt, and people were finally ready to talk. Mrs. Chin, an elderly widow who lived 3 houses down, came by with homemade cookies and a story that broke my heart. They made me pay $300 in fines for planting roses in my front yard, she whispered, glancing around nervously. Said the red flowers violated the community aesthetic guidelines. I was so scared they'd take my house, I just paid a younger couple, the Rodriguezes. Told me they'd abandoned their family cabin after county inspectors showed up and claimed it was condemned. We couldn't afford to fight it in court, Maria Rodriguez said through tears. We just walked away. The more I heard, the angrier I got. This wasn't just about my cabin anymore. It was about justice for an entire community that had been living in fear. The HOA, meanwhile, wasn't backing down. I received a thick envelope in the mail filled with official-looking documents. The header read, Notice of Unauthorized Occupation, Final Warning. The papers were elaborate fakes, complete with fake legal language claiming I was illegally occupying community property and threatening massive fines. They looked convincing enough to fool someone who didn't know better. I turned the whole packet over to Deputy Martinez. His eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "This is sophisticated fraud," he said. "They're not just intimidating people, they're manufacturing fake legal documents. This gives us a lot more to work with." The deputy laid out the plan. "We'll position a team in the woods around your property. If they send those fake cops again, let them make their play. We'll catch them in the act, and that should give us enough evidence to go after the people at the top." Waiting for them to return was agony. Every night, I'd sit on the porch with my coffee, listening to the sounds of the lake and watching for headlights on the gravel road. The cameras picked up deer, raccoons, and the occasional late-night jogger, but no black SUVs. After a week of quiet, I started to wonder if maybe they'd given up. Then, on a cool Thursday evening, just as the sun was setting, I heard the unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. My phone buzzed with a text from Deputy Martinez. "We're in position. Let them come to you." I forced myself to remain seated on the porch swing, sipping my coffee like I didn't have a care in the world. Inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs. The same black SUV rolled into view, headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. The same two fake cops got out, looking more determined and angry than before. "We warned you." The tall one shouted as they approached. "You didn't listen? This time, you're coming with us." I took a slow sip of coffee, amazed at how steady my hands were. "You know," I said conversationally, "I've been thinking about our last conversation, and I realized something interesting." They stopped at the bottom of my porch steps, confused by my calm demeanor. "What's that?" the shorter one demanded. "Real deputies don't run away when someone calls 911, I said with a slight smile. "Real deputies welcome backup. Real deputies don't wear sneakers with their uniforms. And real deputies definitely don't rip decals off their vehicles and speed away like criminals, their faces flushed with anger and embarrassment." "Stand up," the tall one bellowed. "You're under arrest for trespassing, theft of community property," and he paused, seemingly making up charges on the spot. "Resisting community authority." I almost laughed. Resisting community authority. That wasn't even a real thing, but I didn't move. I sat there calmly on my swing, knowing that just beyond the tree line, real law enforcement officers were watching and recording every word. The shorter fake cop started up my porch steps, handcuffs in his hand. "This is your last chance," he snarled. That's when the night exploded with light and sound. "Sheriff's Department. Nobody move." Floodlights blazed from the woods as real deputies emerged with weapons drawn. The fake cops froze like deer in headlights, all their bluster evaporating in an instant. I set my coffee cup on the porch railing and allowed myself a satisfied smile as the real professionals took control. Justice, it seemed, had finally arrived at Crystal Lake. Watching those two criminals get handcuffed on my own front lawn was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. All their threats, all their fake authority, all their attempts to intimidate MIT all crumbled. The moment real law enforcement showed up, impersonating law enforcement officers. Attempted kidnapping, conspiracy to commit fraud. Deputy Martinez read off the charges as they loaded the fake cops into squad cars. And these are just the beginning charges. But the real breakthrough came when one of them started talking. Within an hour of his arrest, the shorter fake cop whose real name was Gary Stevens was singing like a canary. He confessed that Margaret Whitman, the HOA president, had paid them $500 each to scare off the new cabin owner. She'd promised them a $2,000 bonus if they could get me to abandon the property permanently. "She said you were disrupting the community," Stevens told investigators. "That you were a troublemaker who needed to be dealt with before you caused problems for everyone else." The sheriff's department moved quickly. Within 48 hours, they had search warrants for HOA offices and the homes of board members. What they found was a criminal enterprise disguised as a homeowners association. For over a decade, the Lakeview HOA had been systematically terrorizing property owners, using intimidation tactics to force them off their land. They'd then claimed the abandoned properties as community assets, selling them to preferred buyers or absorbing them into the HOAs. Holdings, the financial records revealed hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal fees, fines, and property transfers. Margaret Whitman had been living like a queen off stolen money, while families like the Rodriguezes lost their homes to fraud. But the worst part was learning how many victims there had been. The investigation uncovered at least 15 families who'd been driven away over the years. Good, honest people who'd worked their whole lives to afford a little piece of paradise, only to have it stolen by criminals wearing the mask of civic authority. Mrs. Chen broke down crying when deputies told her she could get her $300 back, with all the other fines she'd paid over the years. "I was so scared," she sobbed. "I thought they could really take my house." The day they arrested Margaret Whitman was incredibly satisfying. I happened to be in town getting supplies when I saw the commotion at the HOA offices. She was marching toward the building in her usual power suit, clipboard in hand, when deputies intercepted her. "Margaret Whitman, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, conspiracy, and racketeering." The look of shock and indignation on her face was priceless. She actually tried to order the deputies around, demanding they explain themselves, insisting there had been some mistake. "I run this community," she shouted as they put handcuffs on her. "You can't do this to me. I know important people." But her protests fell on deaf ears. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The other board members were arrested over the following days. The whole criminal organization collapsed like a house of cards once the light of truth hit it. The impact on our community was immediate and profound. Families who'd been living in fear for years finally felt free to enjoy their homes. Properties that had been absorbed by the HOA were returned to their rightful owners. The illegal fees and fines were refunded, and through it all, I kept working on my cabin. Every day I'd wake up early and put in a few hours of work before the heat got too bad. I replaced the entire roof, rebuilt the deck, updated the electrical system, and modernized the kitchen. Each improvement felt like a victory, not just over the elements, but over the forces that had tried to steal my dream. Sarah started spending more time at the cabin as it took shape. We'd sit on the new deck in the evenings, watching the sunset, paint the lake in shades of gold and pink. They really thought they could. "Scare us away," she said one evening. I nodded, sipping my beer and listening to the loons calling across the water. Fear is a powerful weapon, but it only works if you let it. "What do you think will happen to them?" she asked. "They'll face justice," I said. "Margaret's looking at serious prison time. The fake cops, too. And everyone who was part of their scheme. The legal proceedings took months, but justice was served. Margaret Whitman was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy. The fake cops got 6 years each. Other board members received sentences ranging from probation to 3 years. Depending on their level of involvement, the Lakeview HOA was officially dissolved by court order. All its assets were seized and used to compensate victims. A new, legitimate community association was formed, one that actually served residents instead of preying on them. On the 1-year anniversary of my first encounter with Margaret, I hosted a community barbecue on my fully restored deck. Neighbors who'd been too scared to speak to each other for years were laughing and sharing stories. Kids were jumping off the dock while their parents relaxed in lawn chairs. Bill, my elderly neighbor who'd first warned me about the HOA, raised his beer in a toast. "To Tom," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "the man who refused to back down when the rest of us were too scared to fight." "I didn't do it alone," I replied, gesturing to the crowd. It took all of us finally saying enough to bring down their house of lies. As the evening wound down and guests headed home, Sarah and I sat alone on the deck, listening to the gentle lap of waves against the shore. "Any regrets?" she asked. I thought about it seriously. The fight had been stressful. There were moments when I'd questioned whether it was worth it, but looking out at our beautiful lake, knowing that families were safe in their homes, feeling the peace that comes from standing up for what's right, ... double quotes, not one, I said. The cabin we'd dreamed of was finally ours, completely, legally, permanently. No one would ever take it from us again. And more importantly, no criminal organization would ever terrorize our community again. Sometimes, the most important battles aren't the ones you choose. They're the ones that choose you. This fight chose me, and I'm grateful I was brave enough to see it through, because in the end, truth always wins. It just sometimes needs ordinary people with extraordinary courage to help it along. Thanks for watching, folks. If you've ever dealt with HOA harassment or neighborhood bullies, you know how important it is to stand your ground. Don't let fear make your decisions for you. Document everything. Know your rights. And remember, bullies only have the power you give them. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to neighborhood bullies? I'd love to hear your stories.